friends, welcome to Change Started, to our series of Change Trails. So today we have a very special guest, Pooja Mitra. She is the founder of Terra Conscious, which is into marine conservation. So it is a very interesting subject. I mean, generally we expect marine conservation to be part of government activities, and you would not find many startups or private organization getting into this space. So very, very interesting. I mean, this conversation has to be very interesting because we are speaking about marine conservation in our Change Trails for the first time. So thanks, Pooja. Thanks for taking the time out. Welcome to Change Trails. So why don't you just start with your journey, Pooja? I mean, how did this happen? So what was your journey like?
Thank you, Varun and Sameer, and to Change Started for this opportunity. I'm really glad to, please join me all online and have a chat. Well, my journey was a little different in the sense that I never set out studying environment. I was doing media in college and English, and I always wanted to write. I thought I'd be a environmental and social journalist. And chance opportunity sent me off to Assam in Northeast, where I was actually working on elephant conflict at the time. And I started doing a lot of work with this non-profit organization there. And I was very young. I was only in my mid 20s, and uh, you know at that time you're very idealistic and you really want to change everything on the ground. And I was working with tribal communities, with women, and wildlife conflict, and I was understanding a lot at that time, how privileged we are, some of us have been, to access English education, to have the kind of life that we've had and the opportunities, and so many are denied that. So that really motivated me. And around that time, I came to Hampi after that, and I started working with rural livelihood development there with an organization called the Kishkinda Trust. And around that time, I began feeling like I wanted to get back into wildlife work, and try to see where I can really make a mark. Because I wasn't that interested in big institutional conservation at the time, because I was getting exposed to a lot of different smaller organizations and different ways of people doing things. At the time, we got an opportunity. I got an opportunity to move to Goa, because there was an organization called the Federation of Indian Animal Protection Organization. It's called FIAPO. It's based out of Delhi, and they had launched a campaign to stop the establishment of dolphin circuses in India. So at the time, Jayanti Natarajan was the Minister of Environment and Forest, and India, under tourism development, had thought of modeling on this Sea World and Dubai Sea Parks kind of thing. And they wanted to have one in Delhi, in Chennai, and I mean, you can just imagine dolphins in an aquarium in Delhi. Like, where are you going to get water from in the first place? So. And they hired me as a campaign manager, and I really didn't know anything about marine because I grew up in Bangalore, and my exposure was largely to terrestrial wildlife, if at all, and that too through just volunteering at local animal welfare shelter and things like that. And just like anyone, I visited the coast for holidays, and I didn't know much about it. But getting into this campaign, I realized that not just I, but the general public or the media also was equally unaware. Probably a handful of ecologists you can count on your fingers who are deeply into marine ecology and studying it in India. But tiger dominates the discussion. When people think of wildlife, people think of tiger, elephant, and people forget that dolphins, whales are given the same protection in India as Schedule 1 under Wildlife Protection Act. And we have very few marine protected areas as well. And it's difficult to protect areas for large mammals, which dolphins are, because, they move around, they have large home ranges, they're very social, they like to live in family groups. At the time, we launched a really massive media campaign, and we were trying to educate the public. And I was fortunate enough to be guided by Dr. Lori Marino, who's in the US, and she's one of the premier neuroscientists in the world who study dolphin brains and whale brains. And the group together, dolphin, whales, and porpoises, is known as cetaceans. So when we got into this campaign and we were kind of fighting for their rights and saying that, also highlighting the fact that India's got poverty, you've got farmer distress, and some of the areas where they were planning these massive stadium-size aquariums, farmers don't have water in the fields. People don't get regular water in their homes. And here you're wanting to divert, seawater and all the electricity it will pull to maintain. And then all the studies globally were showing that these animals do very badly in captivity. They don't live as long. They suffer a lot of psychological and physiological injuries, disorders. And basically, they are meant to traverse the oceans. Like a bottlenose dolphin can swim like 500 kilometers in a day. And you're putting him in a swimming pool, which is not even as big as the parking lot, probably, like as is the case in SeaWorld. And there they've got a killer whale. And imagine an animal like that, which is social, intelligent, and it's living its entire life of 30, 40 years just going round and round in a swimming pool. I mean, if you think lockdown is hard, I mean, imagine what that animal is going through. There's no escape over there. So that really hit me, and I realized that there was very little that we knew about these animals, and we didn't even know that we have them in India as commonly as one would expect people to know, given the fact that we're a peninsular country. We have 7,000 square kilometer of coastline, Arabian Sea on the west, you have your Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean in the south. So chances are that you would have these animals in your wild, but I never heard of anybody, even talking about these things. Or even when we came to Goa for a holiday, it never occurred to anybody that there were dolphins here or anything like that. And that's really a branding issue. It's because of the way the state has been sold. So anyway, I got into that, and after the campaign, I got a chance to work for World Wildlife Fund. And at the time, I was torn between should I join like a big institution, and I had gone to Oxford and done my masters in conservation on the Commonwealth Scholarship, and I'd also there is a bit traditional, these Ivy League universities and whatever they are still looking at least then 10 years 20, 15 years back, they were still looking at conservation through, we have to research, we have to publish. Social enterprises weren't talked about as much as they are today, and definitely not in the wildlife sector as much. And then when I would join them, I joined as the program coordinator for Goa. And my mother was visiting at the time. And like all parents, what is there to do in Goa? What is there to see? Let's do something. So I said, oh, I've just done this dolphin campaign and now I'm in WWF and I heard there's dolphin watching in Goa. So why don't we go out? It'll be nice to see them in the wild and, do that. And this is again where privilege plays a big role. Because I come from a privileged background, my father was fortunate enough to be able to take us abroad to travel when we were younger. And we had gone on whale and dolphin watching experiences in New Zealand and, in the US. And when I went in India, I just found that there were so many gaps. There was no signage, there was no information. You kind of sat on the boat 45 minutes, chasing the animal, coming back. The boat operator had no knowledge about the animal. And I just thought, oh, well, why aren't we doing something about it? And then I went and looked it up, and I found that in Goa, it's even defined as a water sport. So it's actually under the water sport policy. It's literally crocodile watching is listed as Crocodile Dundee. Okay. And then you have banana boat and jet ski, and then dolphin watching. It all comes under one thing. And which is completely unfortunate because dolphin watching, crocodile watching is wildlife tourism. It is not adventure sport. It doesn't have to be done at high speed. It doesn't have to be done without regulation. And the forest department had no role to play in the licensing process, as I found out, even though the entire industry is based on a Schedule 1 animal. And when you come to Goa, people will sell you dolphin trip and all of that. And then I saw that the trips were being marketed very cheaply. They were being sold. Only in India can you watch an endangered Schedule 1 animal for 300 rupees. And if you think that the boat is a 10-seater boat and the man is probably spending about 80 bucks a person conducting the trip, then he has to give 100 rupees to the agent who brings him the audience. What is he making really, in a trip? And that too, he has to fill the boat. And because there was no cap on licensing, the boats had expanded to, in one area in North Goa called Kandoli, there are almost 280 operators registered there. So it's a huge pressure on just one bay, and then obviously we wanted to see were the dolphins experiencing anything in this. And maybe later I'll talk about what we saw in the study. So anyway, that led me to kind of get into this and kind of try to raise awareness that this is happening. We need responsible tourism. And then the boat operators told me something very interesting. They said, we don't want to do it like this. And we don't want to chase the animals. And it's just that this expectation the tourist has, the consumer has, that, oh, I've paid money and I need a thrill and I have to see this animal. And if I don't, then I'm not got value for money. They're like, this is just forcing us to, give them a sighting. Otherwise, they take it out on us, and we lose money from our pocket because our employer, if the employer doesn't happen to also be the boat driver, then they get pressured. And the other sad part was that the dolphin watching was sold, or is still sold, as part of a one-day package. So they have to finish the ride in 45 minutes and get the person back to go to see some other activity. Now that means if you want to watch an animal, you have to watch with patience. You know, it might be 1 hour, 2 hours, and that's how the lives of animals unfold, because it takes them almost 15, 20 minutes to get used to your presence, to get used to the boat, get used to you being there. And then if you're very quiet and you watch, you might be lucky enough to observe. And also we have to remember that marine mammals spend only 5% of their life on the surface of the water. Everything else they're doing is happening underwater. So in that little glimpse, you have to, hope that you see something that teaches you something about them. So this is where I came from. And I realized very quickly that going through this institutional route is going to not be enough. We also need to show that there's business value, because at the end of the day, caring about wildlife is a privilege. If your stomach is full, if you have a roof over your head, if you feel safe and secure, then you can look out and think, oh, I want to do something for nature and wildlife. If you're just struggling to survive, as many of the boat community is, you can't expect them to now sit and think about wildlife. And I'm 36 years old now. I have had so much influence in my life of education. My home was full of books. My father was very interested in wildlife. We were exposed from a young age. All of that has contributed for me to even have a passion and build a career and then get the opportunities to do that. How can you expect someone who hasn't had any of that to do some 1 hour workshop and suddenly become a nature friendly guide? And we put a lot of pressure on the most vulnerable component. If you ask me, the boat driver and the dolphin are equally exploited by different factors. And we are really looking at how do we build that bridge? How do we make every segment of this delivery chain, whether it is the government, whether it's the marketing agent, whether it's the hotel where you're staying, the boat driver, the consumer, everybody sensitized with that. We understand that it takes the village to protect. It takes everybody. And it's not only the responsibility of one or the other. So that's kind of where Terra Conscious was born. And last 3 years, we've been very fortunate to be at the right place at the right time. I think people were getting sensitized around India, especially in the, let's say, the urban society, definitely starting to ask questions about, where, if the kind of lives they're leading are actually helping them in any way. And I see more and more young people reaching out and saying, we want to do something ethical, we want to do something responsible. Many parents worrying that the children are not getting enough exposure. They have memories of, because I think our generation still remembers, growing up, going to grandparents' house and playing in the garden. And I remember when I was growing up, there was no video games and all. You went out to play and you had to be back by a certain time and do your homework. And there was the dial-up phone, and, you couldn't be on it too long and, all of that. So I think for many people are realizing that, we've got to reconnect, and we don't want to do it in a mad rush anymore. On a very sort of extractive way. And I think we were there with an experience curated the way people wanted to experience this. And we had a very simple premise. We would partner with the boat operator community. We would do this together, and we would earn and they would earn. Because I felt that it's very easy to get funded. And I'm not saying we don't raise funding. Obviously, we have a hybrid model of revenue and funding, because some things are not easy to only do out of revenue generation. But at the end of the day, I really feel like the onus of, protecting our environment is on everyone, right? And when we want people to change, we also have to prove that doing things sustainably actually works. Yeah. And if I can't run my lifestyle and my aspirations on that premise, then I have no business going to a boat operator and saying, "Arey, aap aisa kar lo, and why don't you change your ways?" Because he also has aspirations. He has children. He wants them to have a better life. And their kids all want, they don't want to work on the boat. And I keep telling them that, actually it's just public perception. If somebody has a yacht, you're like, oh, wow, he's made it, But if someone has a 10-seater boat, you're like, oh, labor. And that is how Indian mentality is, sadly, because of our caste and class, persuasions. And I want these youth to understand that they can be entrepreneurs. They don't have to drive the boat. They can employ somebody, but they can manage their fathers and mothers' businesses. And women have very little role to play. That was another sad thing I saw, that mostly none of the boat operators are women. Hardly any of the owners are women. And my entire team, it was myself and 2 3 other young interns and my husband, who's a scuba diving instructor. We were there together doing this, and we got onto the boat, and it was a big shock for all the men, because there were these women on the boat and they didn't know what we were doing, whether we were guests or what, we were models or taking some photographs. And they were really asking us, like, what team was all young girls who wanted to get into conservation, because I guess I have a little bias of wanting to hire women and work with women as well, because I feel we don't get enough opportunities as it is. The boatmen really were amazing. People had told me so many things, or why you're getting into this. And you do face a lot of everyday sexism, in anything, especially when you work with the government, because of just that generation is not used to, dealing with women at a very practical level. But when I got on there and I went as a business person and not as a WWF, but as a terror conscious startup, a conservation. I call myself a conservation social enterprise, I would say. It's like, I think that's what we do, because we have a revenue model where we charge for our education programs. We take people out on experiences to educate them and experiential learning in a way. But we also do impact. And that was our premise from the get-go. And I really don't know why business can't be that, because I feel that ideology of make your money and then do philanthropy later is a very reductive way of looking at how we can all be sustainable entrepreneurs and have sustainable livelihoods. Because it should be the principles on which your business is based. If you can't be ethical and fair, then there's no point doing wrong things and then at the end be like, oh, now I've made the money and now I'll do good. That doesn't work. And also I realized that if you get into it thinking, what am I going to make out of this and where am I going to go, that's not going to help you either, because you can't do this unless the community is backing you, unless they are benefiting, and unless you're distributing that benefit equally, where you are also benefiting and so are they. And I realized also that it also dealt with people's sense of pride and dignity, because I used to ask my board partners, how do you feel after we did a year of work with them? We said, how is it going, what can we do to make it better? And they said, actually this is going great. And I thought they were going to say like they're earning more money and because we're paying them better. And they said, no, it's the dignity and respect that we get from the customers that come on your experience. They value us, they value our knowledge, they look at us and respect what we do. And I often find it amazing that people don't respect it, because your life is in their hands. If you're willing to pay mega bucks to a pilot, why can't you pay bucks to the boat driver? It's the same thing. If he doesn't know the oceans, if he doesn't know how to maneuver the boat, that could be your last trip. So we don't value labor correctly in India, firstly. And therefore, people don't value their own profession. And it took me so long to sort of break through and build a relationship of trust. I've been in Goa 8 years. It's taken 8 years for the community to really trust me. Right from the dolphin campaign to the WWF study and project to my own business, and my husband being a diver and going from the jetty every day. And he's from the Konkan coast, so he speaks the local language. And it just took them to understand and believe that we were there to support and that we also were gaining from it. So that, because nobody wants to feel like charity is being done. Everybody has, pride, and they don't want a handout and they don't want all of that. They just want to be taught how to do their job and to, get supported where they need the support. And a lot of them have come and now started asking me, can you help us to forecast for climate change? Which is not a conversation I thought we would ever be able to have, but we are. I mean, I find it harder to convince people about climate change in my own drawing room at home with friends and family. But here, they are seeing every year we lose more days to bad weather. Already, Goa has only a 180-day operating season. Now, out of that, if you're going to lose even 20-30 days to bad weather, which is only increasing. Last year we had these untimely rains in December, and then we had the pandemic, and then we had these floods in December in Goa. And, like, people have not seen this kind of thing. So now everyone beginning to wonder that businesses which are based on ecosystems, based on wildlife, if you do not take that into account, I mean, that is your capital, right? It's your natural capital which your business is based on. So protecting it is a business strategy, I would say. It's not really something separate from that. So that's kind of like my journey and where I am right now. And I'm trying to just grow these programs and sensitize as many people as I can. And really, I guess I would just like to close that answer by saying that what I'm trying to do is to just reveal to people that this is what our ocean and coasts of India hold. These are the people that live there, work there. These are the animals that live there, call it their home. And there is you who's connecting with it through different things. It could be activities, could be just going to the beach, whatever. And you have to be equally engaged and conscious when you are in that space, because otherwise you are going to create a footprint that is going to be difficult to change if we don't change the way we have been doing things. So that's kind of like where we are, and we see ourselves more as as educators rather than just sort of travel promoters. So yeah, that's kind of like the long-winded answer to your
Absolutely.
question.
It was actually necessary to give that long answer, Pooja, because this first, I mean, for me, marine itself is a very mystic thing, right? I mean, we can feel, we can touch what is there on the earth, but what is inside the water, it is all
Yeah.
mystical. I mean, we don't really know what is happening inside. And as you said, we being in a privileged position, we know certain things maybe better than that boatman or that fisherman. So it is upon us that we do certain thing or which enables the ecosystem, which enables the community. And if we don't do it, then who else? I mean, no, nobody from heavenly body will come and do stuff, right? I mean, people on the planet have to do it, and it is me and you.
Absolutely.
It is me and you who have to do it. Just the last question. I mean, last bit. I mean,
Yeah.
the name itself, Terra Conscious. How did you
Yes.
go and name
Come
this?
up with that.
Uh,
Oh, I don't know. I was just thinking, I think I wanted a name that would work as a verb also, like a doing verb. Like I wanted to be able to say, like, my idea is you have to be terra conscious. You have to be aware of the planet at all times, whether it's water or it's land or it's air or it's trees or whatever it is that you're passionate about. But you have to be aware of it. Every little choice you make is impacting it and impacting you. And just living is an impact, right? So the idea was that can we create a business which can help people to become terra conscious in their day to day, and at the same time use that to benefit so many who don't have access to these information or these systems, and instead are getting marketed those same products which we now don't want to use. They are being marketed that and being told that look, it's aspirational, the aisa wala oil, vaisa wala shampoo, and everybody wants it, right? I mean, it doesn't matter where you are in life, you want to get there. So that was kind of the idea, and just kind of came up with it, and it worked. I mean, people responded to it nicely, and we are very young as a startup, honestly. Like, this is our third year, so I don't know where it's going to go as a business. I hope it will grow, but we definitely want to be in the edu travel space. And the impact work we do is largely community based. So we don't do direct work with animals. I always tell people, like, if you're coming to Terra Conscious, don't expect that you'll be diving with dolphins. That's not happening.
but, but
But you will certainly watch them a lot.
but your logo has an animal, right? It's a stingray, if I'm not wrong.
It's whatever people think it is, actually. It's actually the idea of three components, like a ray, kind of. But the idea is like community, course, and conservation. Like it's coming together. Yeah, kind of like in a. I was actually hoping it looks a bit like a manta ray, but it doesn't. So, stingray, yeah, maybe that's a good one. So
So,
yeah, this is like really behind what we are doing, and I think like you also said in the beginning of the talk that marine is something people don't talk about. So one thing I will say is like, please talk about oceans and coasts more. I mean, that's really the big one. If you don't know that one, then where do we go from there? So, and especially I'm sure for a Hyderabad audience, which is landlocked, but they need to remember that all their climate is getting influenced by their coast and their oceans.
and
So if that changes, so will Andhra Pradesh change.
exactly. I mean, it is not just about a particular city or a particular place. It's about the world. I mean, I would say
Yeah.
it is about the world. I mean, the kind of problems which humans have created, it is impacting globally. I mean, it is not just me, you sitting in Goa or Hyderabad or Bombay or whatever. It is somebody in
Yeah.
Greenland, Puerto Rico, Brazil, Iceland. Everywhere this
Everywhere.
problem is.
Yeah.
And if we don't do it, then who else? I mean, that is what.
And I think we need to use our social media access better. We are using it to promote all kinds of nonsense and, sort of highlight all kinds of unnecessary issues which are very momentary in nature. Just now we can see in our country, where all the discussions are going. And we are not talking about the things that actually make us human and allow us to live and have these opinions in the first place. If you're not even alive, you are not going to decide who's right or wrong, right? Because you're not even there. So I think people forget that they are mammals and they are animals and they are species and they have habitat needs and they have food, water needs, survival needs. And I think remaining connected to that is very humbling and it's very important, because technology and money can only insulate you to a point.
Mm.
Beyond that, if you do not understand yourself and what you need to survive, and you can be the richest person in the world and you can be unhealthy. And we already see with the pandemic that what life has become for everybody, and it's hit everyone. And climate change is 10,000 times worse.
Mm.
So, and those disasters will just keep coming. I mean, look at what's happening in California and, all over the world right now. And I think people are expecting climate change to be like one big tsunami that will come and drown like New York or something. But it's not. It's a million little cuts. It's extreme weather patterns is going to affect your agriculture, make your food production more difficult. So I think definitely we, like you said, we need to think as an interconnected global community and do everything we can to amplify each other and support each other's initiatives and make sure that people understand how things connect and stop thinking in such a boxed way and such a categorized way that you can be a techie, a dancer, and be a conservation person. You can be anything you want to be, and use your time like that, and like you're doing. I'm sure, I know you do other things as well as part of your career, but I think it's great that you started this and I hope it does really well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, Pooja, I mean, talking to a founder of Terra Conscious was very, very enlightening. So consciousness and enlightenment happened as part of this conversation. Extremely, extremely delightful, and it was a pleasure talking to you, Pooja. So thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
तुझे नाव किती आहे?
शनराज तुकाराम जुरत.
माझं नाव आहे प्रेमानंद वासुदेव मोरजे.
माझे नाव समीर रोहिदास मोरजे.
तुम्ही कुठे राहता?
आम्ही केमवाडा मोरजे.
9 वर्ष झाले आणि बोट काढले आता आणि डॉल्फिन ट्रिपवर.
मी पहिल्यांदा माइनमध्ये होतो, बाजवर कामाला होतो. नंतर ते बाजी बंद पडले मायनी, नंतर मी इथे आलो सोडून.
हांव तेरा कॉलेजींत वांगडा जे हांव जॉब आतां करता हो आमकां बेस्ट आनी इजी असो मेळ्ळा. पयले जे आमी व्हरताले पळय ते आनी आतां खूब डिफरंट आहा. पयले आमी व्हरताले एकदम क्लोज व्हरताले, बोट चलयताले, डिस्टर्ब जातालो डॉल्फिन. जो आतां आमी रूल फॉलो करता मॅडमीन जो तेरा कॉलेजींत आमकां शिकयला, डॉल्फिनाक इतली काय टार्गेट दवरपाक, इतले डिस्टन्स रावपाक जाय अशें आमी करून खूब बरें आमकां मेळ्ळा. आनी अशे भायले बोटी आहात हांगा जे डॉल्फिन करतात तांकां आमी हे भशेन हो रूल फॉलो करा. डॉल्फिनाक त्रास जावंक जायना, स्पीड वाडोवंक जायना, तेंचो रोड क्रॉस करूंक जायना अशें आमी तांकां खूब रूल फॉलो सांगता. आमकां जे शिकयला ते आमी तांकां दाखयता आनी तांकां सांगला तुमी आमकां जॉयन जाय, हितून आमकां इजी आनी वयल्यान आमकां 4 पयशे जास्त मेळटले अशें आमी तांकां सांगलेलें.
Local communities are critical to enabling successful conservation action. It is their indigenous knowledge, support and resilience that has allowed wildlife to thrive in their vicinity even today.